Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Authentic Relating for the Holidays. I'm just going to give it a few moments while everyone filters in. Seeing some familiar names. Nice. Cool. Welcome. This is part of our webinar series. And given the time of year and that many of us are heading home for the holidays and spending time with family, we thought it would be timely to offer an authentic relating for the holidays webinar to give you some resources and pull from the sort of library and archive of authentic relating skills and tools that we think would be most fitting and appropriate and beneficial for people who are heading home for the holidays. How can we experience a transformation and a shift in the experience of connecting with our family and the people that might be gathering together for the holiday celebrations. My name is Ryel. I'm a co-founder and senior course leader at Art International. And just to give you a little bit of background on Art, we are an authentic relating training organization. And we're all super passionate about authentic relating in our lives and in our relationships, and want to do everything that we can to convey the potency and the value and the impact that these skills and tools of authentic relating can have on our relationships with our loved ones, partners, families, as well as everywhere else that we encounter people in a social context, in the work environment, friends, community, even strangers. And so actually, I'll say that at the top of this session, everything that I'll be sharing with you here now has absolutely equal value and implications for all of your relationships. This is sort of geared and customized to the context of being with your family on the holidays. I'll for sure acknowledge that time spent with family on these occasions can be confronting and challenging, and there's always this sort of simmering potential for conflict and disagreement and clashing of different values. And so I'm hoping to offer some resources here that can provide a different paradigm, a different experience. Where is it that we can actually see time with family on these occasions as an opportunity to go deeper, to learn something about ourselves, to learn something about our families and about the world, in fact, leveraging and using what is possible, what can be experienced in relationship. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. We'll have a little bit of time, I hope, at the end for any questions that you might have or any shares based on what I share with you here. But I'm going to start things off by sharing my screen so you can all follow along, and made some notes here that I think are most relevant and appropriate for the context of spending the holidays with family. So the first thing I want to name is the potential for how we might enter into this space of sharing time and space with family. What is it that we're actually bringing into that space? What is sort of preloaded in ourselves, in our minds, in our bodies, as we prepare to step into this space? It might be for a lot of people that they're bracing, they're bringing resistance, they're sort of preparing for a difference of values or difference of opinions or perspectives, and sort of bracing for a clash. And so really for me, the first step is to check that aspect of myself. Is that what I'm bringing? And if that is what I'm bringing, to what extent am I creating the reality that will map on to my pre-existing perception of what I'm bringing into these shared spaces. And so even before we enter into a shared space with family and all of the history that is loaded up in a family dynamic, the invitation here is to first notice, even unconsciously, what I might be bringing, what lens or constraints or expectations I might be bringing into this dynamic, and seeing if there's an opportunity to shift and open up a new dimension, a new perspective, put on a new lens of stepping into this space. And that shift to that new perspective might actually create an entirely different reality as we venture into such a dynamic. It certainly, I mean, we're not the first to pioneer this perspective of how your pre-existing perceptions shape your reality. So what you bring into this dynamic will in fact have an influence over how you end up experiencing it. And so with that, I want to see if there's a possibility of tapping into, and if it's not available, then cultivating a value for connection and curiosity, intimacy, forgiveness, a deep seeing of each other, humility, a learning from the people that I'm sharing space with, and seeing if I can sort of orient myself to these kinds of values before I even take the flight or take the drive and step into this space. Can I configure my internal world such that I experience this time together with family in a way that's congruent and aligned with the values that I'm bringing into it? If I'm bringing in, something like, oh my God, this is gonna suck, this is gonna be miserable, I'm not gonna get along with my uncle, I know we're gonna get into conflict, I'm just gonna have to suppress my emotions, I just got to get through this, I'm doing this out of duty. All of these things might end up actually acting as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so how about I actually take a moment before I enter into this space and cultivate something else? If I want to have the experience through the holidays of connection and intimacy, then I need to take responsibility up front to tap into or cultivate a value for these things. And if I bring those values into the shared space, then I'm much more likely to have an experience that aligns with the values that I bring. So you get to create your own personal context. Context is something that we teach throughout all of our courses. I don't have enough time right now to break it down completely, but context essentially is the container inside of which we experience shared experiences with other people. And so, there's an opportunity and an invitation here to create my own personal context inside of which my why, my values, we sort of interchangeably use why with the values that I hold, what matters to me, what's important to me, what I care about. And so if I can lead with a value for connection and intimacy, if I can make that my why for coming home and sharing time and space with these people, then I'm most likely to experience my reality, the reality outside of myself, as aligned with those core values. And so the way that we break down the construction of a context is who, what, when, where, why. These are the ingredients that go into the shaping and designing of a context for myself and for shared experiences with others. So in this case, who maybe there's somebody in the family that I want to really connect with, or that I want to clear something with. So consider who of the people who are gathering I actually have an intention, an explicit intention of spending time with, of dropping in with, of connecting with, of creating a kind of intimacy or field of forgiveness with. And then what is the experience that I want to have in this shared space? You are not ever a victim or subject to context being imposed on you. You have power, you have a voice, you have will, you have intention, you have a vision. And so you can bring that to bear on these shared experiences. When is however long you're there. There may be a moment or a time during this holiday gathering where you perhaps want to pull somebody aside. You want to spend some time with a particular person. Maybe you don't want to spend the entire time just in the mix of everybody all together and just have to go with the flow. Where is it that you can create something? You can carve an experience out that actually really works for you, that meets your needs and accommodates your values. So really think about these components before you come into the shared space. I know for me, like I have half my family live in Kansas, and I used to have some resistance to going out there because I had a story that we're so different. We have nothing in common. How could we possibly relate? I'm just going to have to endure this. But that has completely shifted for me. And for me, it's a real opportunity to connect with my lineage and my bloodline, my, sort of traditional culture and history of culture. And so, I've gone into those experiences telling myself and setting up a context for myself that I actually want to connect. I want to go deeper with the people that I'm sharing space with during this time. And always the most important component and ingredient of setting good context is the why. The why is where my core values live, where my deepest needs and wants live, where I feel myself, where I have a sense of identity. All these live in my own personal why. And so I really want to get in touch with this. And the freedom that's available here is to both get in touch with the existing why. Why am I even going home? Am I doing it out of obligation? Is it because I'm supposed to? And I'm just sort of fulfilling some pre-scripted role that I'm meant to, fulfill or occupy. And to get really in touch with the deeper why of why I'm doing this or really anything I'm doing. And then to also appreciate that there is a freedom to create my own why. And so this is where I can cultivate a deeper intention. I want to go home and I want to experience something different this year. I want to actually experience enlivenment. I want to feel served. I want to feel seen. I want to be able to bring my own perspective. Or maybe I want to actually quiet my own voice or need to express myself and see what I can learn from being in the space with others. And so then you can take this skill of setting context and apply it inside of the holiday family dynamic. So now you're there, you're with your family, and the invitation here is to create an experience that is meaningful for you. You do not have to just go along with whatever's happening. You can find your voice and find your value and create an experience that is meaningful for you while you're there. And again, some examples might be, hey, there's, my uncle, my dad, my sister, that I actually want to use this as an opportunity to connect with or go deeper with, or foster more of a connection with, or share some things with, or get curious. All of these are ingredients for you to shape and create an experience in the midst of the holiday time, the family time. So you might say, hey, so-and-so, while we're here, I would love to drop in with you. I'd love to spend a bit of time together. We never get to see each other. Our lives are busy. We keep missing each other. We haven't been in touch. How about we take a moment and just have a conversation? Or maybe there's something that's been up for me. There's been something that's been kind of weighing on me or bothering me. And I want to take this time as an opportunity to bring it to our attention and to see what we can do to address it and ideally move it through. So I'd love to spend some time together and give this piece some attention. How would that be for you? And always, this is the key aspect of proposing a context, is to ask as an invitation, would you be willing to meet me in this? Would you be willing to join me in this conversation, this interaction, this experience. And they might say, no, not available. I don't want to be in that. I want to spend my time elsewhere. And that's okay. That's totally fine. And the invitation there is that if that is the response, how can I adapt the proposed context in such a way that you might actually be willing to participate in it? So, okay, I hear you're not available. Maybe tomorrow. Could we have even just 5 minutes? Maybe I want an hour and all you have is a few minutes. So maybe we can just start there and see what happens. The point of all this is to have you know that you have power, you have a voice, you have freedom to bring what's important to you into these dynamics. It can often feel disempowering for people. I just got to show up. I got to go through the motions. I got to follow this script. And I want to sort of encourage and challenge you to break from that and to create the experience that really works for you and meets the values that you are bringing to this space. I want to just touch on this because I think there is some relevance to this notion of the hero's journey. I imagine many of us have heard of this archetypal hero's journey, which is that at some point in your upbringing, it's time for you to carve your own path. It's time for you to, leave the nest, leave the sort of embrace of your family, the culture that you came from, as you become more differentiated, most often during the teenage years. It's like, I want to strike out on my own. I reject the, imposed values that my family has put on me or my culture has put on me. It doesn't resonate for me. I mean, for me personally, I grew up Orthodox Jewish. That was just the life that I was born into. It's not like I had any choice. It was just sort of, put on me without any regard for whether or not it resonated or worked for me. And that was the culture that I grew up in. And that culture had its own set of values that I had to subscribe to. And at some point, as I started to differentiate and question and tap into what is right for me, what is my language, what is my path, what do I care about, and how does that path and those cares differ or are contrasted against the culture that I came from or the values that my family holds. And so I left that. I left it all behind. There was a repercussion to that. Some of my family members sort of cut off communication with me. For them, I'd kind of betrayed the values and culture of my upbringing. But I had to strike out on my own authentic path. I had to be on the path that was right for me, that resonated deeply for me. And so this is the sort of second stage of the hero's journey, is to leave the home and leave the nest and venture out on one's own into the unknown world and to carve one's path in that world, to meet people that overlap and resonate with the values that I hold. And that's beautiful and essential and important, to really know oneself and to be true to one's own path and one's own, sort of expanding values as they become more and more defined and articulated. And then there's this key component to the hero's journey, which is to come home bearing the gifts and the treasures and the insights that you have acquired on your own path. As well as as far as I understand the archetypal nature of the hero's journey, it isn't complete until that journey brings one back home and brings these gifts to bear, to return, to offer back at the place of origin. And only then, once one's place of origin is integrated along the path, is the journey complete. And so for sure, I definitely lived through the stage where I said, my family doesn't understand me. I have nothing in common with them. I sort of reject them, maybe literally or energetically. I'm my own person now. And it's taken a long time, years and years, for me to be able to finally get to the place where I can look back and really appreciate and feel deeply grateful for my place of origin The as dysfunctional as it felt at the time, the love and care that I was surrounded by, the people doing the very best that they could to impart to me values that were important to them. And so now I've arrived at a place where I really deeply hold a strong value for going home, for spending time with my family of origin, for spending time in those places and in that culture. And I don't bristle at it. I don't brace. I don't reject. I don't judge. I deeply appreciate. And for me, this is a kind of completion and resolution to this great hero's journey that I think is archetypal because it really resonates across time and space for many of us. Another way of looking at this, another lens, which maps on very similarly to the hero's journey, is the Hegelian Dialectic, which basically postulates that we begin with a thesis, a mapping of the known world. This is the values that were put upon us, that we were stepping into at the beginning. This is how I perceive and see the world. And then at some point, some challenge, some obstacle, some insight, some lesson, a teacher, something comes along to challenge what we thought we knew. We thought we understood the world. Something occurs, a breakdown, a trauma, something that's shaken us, shakes us, and challenges us in our worldview. What I thought I knew to be true, I don't know is true anymore. And so now I swing the needle to the other end of the spectrum. Wow, what if everything that I thought to be true was completely false? And now this whole other paradigm, this whole other world, this whole other body of knowledge and truth is actually what's true. And that is a necessary stage to pass through, the antithesis stage. And then ultimately, the completion, the resolution, the way of tying all of these strands together is the synthesis. This is where I combine both the thesis and the antithesis into an expanded and more comprehensive and more whole perception of the world, of myself, of the people in the world, my relationships, of what I make the world mean. And for a life to pass through these three stages, I think is a beautiful process, because it both honors where I began and the worldview that I first held. It honors that and acknowledges that. It also acknowledges and honors when the needle swung to the other direction and who I was, who I became, what I explored when I left the world that I knew. And then it synthesizes and unites and reconciles all these different aspects. To me, this is what's possible and what's available in our coming home, is a synthesizing of the values that I hold and the values that my family hold into a unified and inclusive perspective of the world, of everything, of humanity. So I want to step into this next distinction here that we call the what, how, why. Certainly, if you've taken more of our advanced courses or spent enough time with us, you'll be familiar with this distinction, the what, how, why. I love bringing this frame into relationship and interaction and conversation. It really has me see the full verticality, the depth of people. I don't want to stay at the surface with people. I want to go deeper. I want to see people more deeply. I'm not willing anymore to just rest at the sort of literal, superficial surface and just be okay with what occurs at that surface. So just to kind of break apart and unpack this diagram here, the what is what someone says. So you're at home, you're with your family, people are saying all kinds of stuff. You maybe agree and you maybe disagree. And the what is just the content, is the literal words that are coming out of their mouth. And you may react to those things, you may, be in conflict or breakdown, but you might end up just being stuck at this what level, and you're potentially missing so much more depth and richness of what is possible. If we just stay at the what level, I think we're sort of isolating ourselves to a superficial space of connection and missing out on a ton of potential intimacy, healing, forgiveness, deeply being seen, seeing another. So the what is above the surface is what we're most conscious of. We're always most often conscious of what we're saying. What we say changes all the time. It's the most tangible, it's the most contactable. And yet, if we are willing to expand our horizons of perception, we can start to tune into the how. The how is how someone is. How are they expressing? It's all the nonverbal. It's everything that's being communicated that isn't the spoken word. So how somebody is expressing themselves, their body language, their facial expression, the tone and volume of their voice, all of this is the how. And for any of us who have spent time in this practice, we have come to realize how profoundly rich is the channel of the how. So while the what can be manipulated, distorted, people can be leaving information out, they can be dishonest, and all kinds of games and strategies that they can use to obscure their expression at the what level. At the how level, people are always transparent and always honest. We have a saying in this practice that the body never lies. People are not tracking or are aware or are conscious of how they are expressing. The way that you move your hands and the expressions that you make on your face. You're not typically aware of how you're communicating. And so there's a kind of transparency in how someone is expressing themselves. If you want to know someone's authentic experience, look at their how, and the how will tell you how they're actually really feeling compared to the what. And so the how lives under the surface, that's the wavy line, is that it occurs unconsciously. And so I want to encourage you to really pay attention to how people are communicating, not just what they're communicating. And then underneath the how is the why. This is where people store their core values, their deepest needs and wants, their hopes and dreams, their boundaries, their sense of identity is contained in the why. And if you want to deeply, truly understand someone, you have to access their why. So I want to get into some of these further distinctions. So when you don't understand someone, it's because you don't know, you have not contacted or connected with their why. So you've got, Uncle so-and-so, and he's saying all kinds of stuff about this topic and this issue, and you're just violently disagreeing. What the hell are you talking about? And you just feel disconnected. You feel like, I don't get this person. They don't get me. How could we ever connect? Right? It's like, yeah, I get stuck at the disagreement, and that's all there is. If you're willing to spend some time to get curious, to drop your own potentially rigid or constrained perspectives and values, just leave that behind for a moment or set it to the side and start to ask some of these questions, around, wow, like I hear what you're saying. I'm curious, what has you feeling that way? What has you believing that? Why is it that you see the world this way? These are all questions designed for you to get to what they care about, what matters to them, what's important to them, what are their deeply held values. Once you're able to contact someone's deeply held value, then everything that they're saying makes perfect sense. If you don't understand someone or you're confronted by what someone is saying, slow down, get curious, be humble, set aside your own constrained perspective, and see if you can reveal and peel the layers back and access their underlying value. The most beautiful moments are when you are in contact with someone that you initially have real disagreements with, and you spend some time to get curious, to penetrate down into their why, and you're able to both see and then say, wow, you really care about this. I really get that you have a value for this. You have a value for tradition. You have a value for, sustaining the way the world is. I really get how you're confronted by rapid change and things changing all the time and people telling you how you have to live. And then the other person is like, wow, yeah, thank you. Like in their own words, I feel seen. You can almost like visually see that moment. They'll relax, they'll drop something, their shoulders will drop, something will open in them, they'll take a deep sigh. These are all indications that they're feeling seen, that they're feeling understood, and that you have some capacity for empathy for them. It doesn't mean that you agree with them. You may completely disagree with them, but you understand them. You understand where they're coming from. So you really want to invest and spend the time to get curious and be humble, to be able to really feel people's why. This is where you're coming from. This is the value that's informing your worldview and your opinion. So seek to uncover and see their underlying why. Once you do, they will make total sense to you. Again, you don't have to agree with it, but you can at least understand it. Right? And there's a preciousness. There's such a rare, unfortunately, rare preciousness in each of us being able to be seen in our core why, in how we see the world, to be reflected with that. It's like I've spent so much time with people, who I, at the surface, have completely different viewpoints with, different opinions with, and yet I am willing to spend the time to access their underlying why. And when I do, when I really connect with the values that they hold, so often I learn something about the world or about a topic or about an issue that I wasn't able to see before. I've come in with my, sort of concrete and fixed perspective or opinions about things. You can take any issue, take COVID and vaccines, for instance. I have a fixed opinion about these things. And then I encounter someone at home and they have a completely different opinion. I could just fight them and argue with them or judge them or dismiss them. They're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. If they could only come over to seeing the world how I see it, then we'd have something to relate around. Well, I really encourage you to soften that, soften the fixture of your own opinion and perspective, and spend some time getting curious. And it might be that they are able to share with you a perspective that you weren't able to see before. Often the way that we see the world has blind spots. Like we don't have complete information. And so to spend some time really getting curious about someone who sees the world in a different way, I might be able to fill in that blind spot. I might be able to see something that I wasn't able to see before and expand my perspective of this particular issue or topic. And that kind of segues us into what I think is a really beautiful teaching that we spend a lot of time unpacking and exploring in our courses. And that's dignity, humility, collapse, and posture. So just to kind of unpack this diagram a little bit. So dignity for us is recognizing that I have walked a unique path in life that no single other person has ever walked. I see the world through a perspective as an extension of my own path that no one else sees. And so I hold a unique key. I hold a sliver of the all-encompassing reality that nobody else possesses. And I have a voice to speak that perspective and speak that truth into the world. People can learn from me. I have something that I hold. I have a way of seeing the world that can enhance people's experiences, that can teach people, that can provide insight for people. Dignity is embodied by having a voice to speak one's truth into the world. Humility is the exact opposite. It's recognizing that everybody else has walked a unique path in life and that I have something to learn from everyone else. If I'm willing to quiet down myself and to open my senses, to bring curiosity and to really pay attention, to open my eyes and open my ears, there's something profound that I can learn about the world that I might be missing. Anything that I've ever learned about anything came from my being willing to be humble, to be in my humility. And so, humility can open up us to profound learning and receiving from other people. Now, both dignity and humility have their own respective shadow. The shadow of dignity is what we call posture. So posture is a defensive mechanism when I feel threatened, and that might be by my family and their opinions. Posture is, I know better than you. I am smarter than you. My perspective and my opinion is more sound, more researched, more right, more true, and you're all idiots. You're dumb, you're ignorant, you're sort of subject, you're enslaved to your own narrow perspective of things. It's very condescending. It's looking down on people, and you're closed. You're closed to connection. You're blaming others. There isn't an opening there. And then the shadow of humility is the opposite. It's collapse. I don't know anything. I'm an idiot. I'm useless. I'm clueless. I'm worthless. Right? It's really kind of turning the blame inwards where it becomes shame. And again, I'm close to connection. And then resting right here in the middle is what we call equanimity. Equanimity is having access to both dignity and humility at the same time. It's being able to speak my truth. This is how I see the world. These are my values. This is what's important to me. And humility. I don't know everything. I only possess a tiny sliver of all that there is to know. What more can I learn from the people that I encounter along the path of life? So consider that vital information for yourself, for your path, for your journey, for your wholeness, for your expansion, for your power is contained inside the people that you encounter along the path, and in this case, in your family members. What would it be like if you consider that each of your family members possesses a critical key, a critical insight that will enhance your own life, your own path, your own relationship to the world? If you're up to something in the world that is meaningful and important, consider and imagine that your family members, especially if they are very different than you or hold contrasting perspectives, they hold a key insight that your path and your gifts and your purpose will benefit from. Just consider that for a moment. It's like, again, just referencing my family in Kansas. I spent so much of my life rejecting them, judging them. They have nothing to offer me. And when I brought my humility and I brought my listening and I spent some time out there with them, I realized so many things. One of which was, wow, like community. I'd never actually encountered an experience of such tight-knit community as my family members experienced with their, townspeople in this small little town in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. Like the quality of community, of looking after each other, of taking care of each other. When someone is sick or struggling or needs support, the whole town rallies. People show up for each other. They care about each other. They track each other. They check in with each other. I had not experienced that in my own life. And I came away with a really renewed and deepened value for community. How can I cultivate and participate in a community like that where we are unconditionally accepting of each other? I was blind to that value. I didn't see it until I brought my humility, and that humility unlocked that value. Just as one other example, like their relationship to the earth, to the land, to how the land feeds them and supports them, the seasons, rain and sunshine and heat and cold. There's such an intimacy that they have with the land around them. And I had not appreciated that. I hadn't seen that. And so to see that, to receive it, and to find the resonant value within myself completely transformed my relationship with my family. It's like I was able to find such a deep respect and admiration, and just a deep appreciation for the values that they hold. And so my humility was able to unlock that and open that up for me to really receive and appreciate. I think this map is so useful to notice where you might be on the scale. So you're with your family and you're like, screw these people. They don't have anything to offer me. I'm just here out of obligation. You're in posture, right? That would be called posture. Collapse would be like, oh God, I feel so small here. I'm being constantly judged. I can never amount to anything in the eyes of my family members. So just to be able to notice these, to name them, to recognize, wow, like I am closed right now. and to see where it is that you can bring yourself back. So posture is the complete absence of humility. It's dignity, but without any humility. See where you can kind of bring yourself back into humility, which means not playing out the voice of judgment, but to quiet yourself inside and to access your senses, your hearing, your listening, your seeing. And then collapse is the complete absence of dignity. You've lost all sense of self-worth. So see where you can reclaim a sense of inner worth that'll bring you back into the spectrum of being open to connection. So last few tips here, get genuinely curious. It's incredible. And it's incredible to see how powerful curiosity acts like a key that unlocks untold and profound treasures of insight. And I don't mean just with your family members, I mean everyone. The more different someone is from you, the more the more value your curiosity can unlock. The more insights, the more treasures your curiosity can unlock. If you're just relating with someone who's exactly like you, they see the world exactly as you do, they share all the exact same values, you're probably not going to learn much from them. You're probably not going to be enhanced by what they offer you. You might experience a connection and resonance just by virtue of seeing the world in such a similar way. But if you're interacting with someone who sees the world exactly opposite from you, who holds the exact opposite perspectives on things, if you bring your humble curiosity to that interaction, I guarantee you, you will learn something about yourself, about the world that you would not have otherwise been able to access or touch or bring to the surface. So I make it actually a practice to look out in the world, who sees the world as differently from me as possible. That's where I want to go. I love this quote by Abraham Lincoln. He said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." So this is a beautiful practice to identify the people that actually hold the most opposite or different perspectives than you do. That's where you want to go. Those people contain an insight that you need and will benefit from. One of my old teachers used to say, people become interesting when you become interested. It's not their being interesting is not contained in them. It's what you bring. It's the perspective that you bring. It's the lens that you put on. If you are willing to get interested in anyone and everyone, guaranteed your willingness to bring that frame, that perspective, will open up fascinating aspects of how this person has lived their lives, how they see the world, the experiences that they've had, the stories they have to tell. It is like front row to one of the greatest shows on earth, is to sit in curiosity and humility with someone who sees the world very differently than you do. Differences are an opportunity to see more of the world and to expand the tiny sliver of your own limited perception, right? It's like, I don't think that many of us realize how narrow the sliver is of our own perspective of the world, right? I think often we kind of get caught, especially in the age of technology, and sort of amplifying our worldview out into, shared space. I think we get caught in this unfortunate, potentially false perspective that we know the world, we see everything. Our perspective must be the right one. It's reinforced through our community, people that we share a common identity with, social media amplifying and reflecting our own worldviews, giving us this sort of false impression that how we see the world is exactly how the world must be. It isn't. The world is much richer, more complex, more nuanced, more comprehensive than any single one of our own perspectives. And so the opportunity in going home for the holidays and being with your family is to deepen, enhance, and widen your perspective of the world. Imagine that everyone around you at a family gathering are your gurus, are your teachers. Hold the key, hold the insight that will benefit you on your own unique path of life. You can play this. I love playing this game. How many people can feel seen and heard? What if you were to go into your family gatherings playing the game of how many people can I be a catalyst for them feeling deeply seen and heard? What if I could offer that gift? What if I could enhance people's experience? What if I could have as many people around me feeling understood, feeling received, feeling empathized with? Right? It's like we think of context as playing games. You can play any game you want to play. You can play the game of, I'm going to have a terrible time. No one's going to understand me. I'm going to argue and be in conflict. I'm going to leave just even more reinforced in the divides and the misunderstandings. That might be a game that you have played or are playing. What if you shifted the game that you're playing? And you have that power. You can play the game of what I'm suggesting here, or some version of it. How many people can feel seen or heard, or whatever version resonates for you, right? So how can you tap into your inner facilitator? It's like myself as a facilitator, I want people to feel connected. I want to cultivate more intimacy. I want to create a space of healing. These things matter to me in how I direct and manifest my facilitation in the world. So, I love this sort of leave no trace kind of approach to family gatherings, right? Like, how can I leave a space that I enter into more beautiful, more preserved, more sacred than how I encountered it? So as you prepare to enter into your family spaces, what if you brought this value? I want to leave the family space more interconnected, more in our hearts, more in our care, more in love. What could I do? How could I show up? Who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What context do I need to create? How do I show up for people in such a way that I leave the space more enriched, more deepened, more interconnected? If you're able to do this, right? It's like maybe your family is, sort of fragmented and there's all kinds of history and judgments. What if you could be an agent and catalyst of leaving that space, entering into that space, and then leaving that space more beautiful, more connected, more softened, more people in their hearts? Wow, like what an incredible gift you could offer to those spaces. And then just to spend a little moment on conflict. For sure, many of us are going to come home and be in some kind of conflict with people. We always say that conflict is a relationships mechanism for unearthing and surfacing the unspoken and the unhidden, or the hidden, the unrevealed, right? Conflict is a doorway to greater intimacy, empathy, being seen, seeing others. It's a complete paradigm shift. Conflict is not something to be avoided. It's not something to just try to get through. It's not just us getting triggered and activated and feeling crappy and just hoping we can get through it. There is actually a beautiful sort of revision, a reconstitution of conflict as a doorway to deeper intimacy. Conflict is a way to bring to the surface all the stuff we have swept under the rug, all the stuff we haven't spoken to. And so you can approach conflict as an opportunity to really come into intimacy, come to terms with whatever's been sort of swept under and suppressed and pushed to the side. So, as I said, conflict is unspoken hurts rising to the surface. Can you receive these unaddressed, unattended hurts with love and care, no matter where they come from, whether they come from you, or they come from your dad, your sister, your uncle, your cousin, whoever, right? Where is it that we can actually invoke and invite conflict as an opportunity to surface these suppressed hurts? And then when they surface, to love them, embrace them, care for them, bring heart to them. And the last thing I'll mention here is the hologram. The hologram is how you do one moment, is how you do every moment, right? How you show up in a single moment is how you show up everywhere. This speaks to the underlying patterns that have been conditioned into us from birth and even before birth, ways that our lineage passes down wounds and insecurities and fears. And so the hologram is a sort of metaphor for noticing how we are run and conditioned to perpetuate these patterns in our lives. And so if nothing else, imagine that how you show up and relate with your family members is how you show up and relate with everyone in your life. And so if you are able to and willing to show up with your family members with love and care and honoring and respect and curiosity, you're imprinting upon yourself the ability to show up that way for everyone that you encounter. So use it as an arena of practice and transformation. No matter how I feel, no matter what stuff I'm bringing, I'm going to do my very best to show up for these people with love and care, empathy, compassion, connection, intimacy, because I want to practice showing up that way for everyone that I encounter. If you have any value for meeting the people in your life with love and care, practice everywhere. Practice in every single moment. Practice especially with the people that trigger you or you're confronted by or irritated by. If you can bring love and care to the people that most irritate you, you will bring love and care to everyone that you encounter. That is the hologram. All right. So that brings us to the end of sort of the prepared pieces. I'd love to open it up just for our last few minutes here. We've just got a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions, shares, anything you want to bring here, space is open. You can, I believe you can do a Q&A here. I think you can raise your hand. And you can chat. So I'll just give it a moment here. If anybody has any questions or anything you want to share, I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I'd also love to hear how this has been for you. Just type it in the chat. How is this? How's it going? Any impacts? Anything that you want to share that's alive for you? Nice. Yeah. Yeah, the hologram is incredibly powerful. Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, for me, just to speak to this hologram, it's like level 10, it's like the big boss at level 10, going home to the family. It's like, wow, if I can practice empathy, compassion, curiosity, intimacy, any of these that I can bring to the home front where it can be most challenging, damn, I can bring that everywhere. I can bring that everywhere. If I can do it there, I can do it anywhere. So it's a super beautiful opportunity to practice. And likewise, if I bring, bracing, conflict, disconnection, judgment, I'm going to bring that everywhere as well. So that's the nature of the hologram. Nice. I'm just looking at the chat here. In the past, when you've empathized and gotten curious with the family and felt resentment when that was not reciprocated, feeling dropped, interrupted, sharing something. Totally. Yeah, exactly. It's like the challenge, and I acknowledge the magnitude of the challenge. Can you still stay in your heart? Can you still access curiosity? Okay, so I noticed that didn't land. You're having an impact. I'm curious what's going on for you. That's the opening to get to the underlying value. If you're confronted, there's disagreement, there's breakdown, it's because somebody is holding a different value than you hold. And if you can bring care, softness, gentleness, curiosity, humility to get to the deeper place, you will uncover something more tender, more vulnerable, more real, closer to someone's heart. That it's like, they're trying to like kind of take you off track and just keep you at the surface in this sort of tense dynamic. If you can Aikido that, like just receive that and circulate it back into curiosity and care, take it a layer deeper or many layers deeper, you'll uncover something really profound and really beautiful that lives under the reactive surface. It's like, don't settle just to stay at the reactive surface. All right, reaction comes back at you, receive it, and go a layer deeper. See if you can drop down a layer deeper. Nice. All right. So I think I want to end with really emphasizing the opportunity that's available in coming home to your family, especially being with people who see the world differently than you do, hold different opinions. It's like, don't try to change them. Don't try to bend them to see the world how you see it. See if you can bring a real humility, real care, real curiosity, and you'll learn something. You'll learn something new. You'll see a blind spot. You'll complete the hero's journey, right? Bringing it all home. Nice. Cool. Thank you so much for joining. Wishing you an abundance of connection, healing, intimacy, and a real possibility of completely redefining the paradigm of the holiday season and spending time with your family. Really hope that you get to experience something rich and deep and beautiful, and you come away with something of great value. That's the opportunity that lives here. Awesome. Thank you so much. Would love to hear how it goes. Come back and hit us up on the flip side of the holidays and let us know how it goes. Sending you all much love and best wishes for a beautiful holiday season. Thank you, everyone.